Thanks for watching I-24 News for the latest updates on the Israel-Hamas war and other threats from across the Middle East. It is now day 72 of the Israel-Hamas war. The IDF continues today to strike Hamas terror targets across Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night vowing that Israel will not stop its mission until it completes the goal of destroying Hamas. He noted that the international pressure to wrap up the ground offensive, perhaps by the end of the year, will not deter Israel from this mission.
We are in a war for our existence, in which we must continue until victory, despite the international pressure and despite the unbearable cost that the war is exacting from us in our fallen sons and daughters. After the elimination of Hamas, the Gaza Strip will be demilitarized, will be under Israeli security control, and no element in it will either threaten us or educate its children to destroy us.
The IDF even right now continues to strike terror targets across Gaza. We have seen the aftermath of some of those aerial bombardments on the channel. The IDF confirming that several more soldiers have been killed today, 2 more soldiers in combat. Our senior defense correspondent, Jonathan Regev, is in the southern city of Sderot, near the border, with more on the IDF's mission. Jonathan, in the wake of that horrible killing on Friday when 3 Israeli hostages were shot mistakenly by IDF soldiers amid the heat of battle, is there a risk that this exact scenario might happen again, the fog of war leading the IDF perhaps to open fire on their own?
The answer, unfortunately, is yes. We can speak about it here on television, but on the ground, things are, of course, completely different. 3 people that you don't know are approaching you. Are they really hostages? Are they terrorists disguised as hostages? Are they hostages that Hamas is sending as a trap to perhaps to drag the IDF soldiers into some kind of a trap? Everything is possible, and therefore the fog of war, as you called it, is a very tricky and dangerous affair. Yes, the soldiers did not, as it seems, did not act according to the conduct, the rules of conduct, and what they're expected to do. But we have to understand that the environment that they're working on is far from being a sterile one. We can sit here about it and debate it and analyze what has happened, and we have the time for that. They have to decide in a split of a second if they're seeing a friend or a foe, and that is obviously a very risky business.
Jonathan, I want to ask about the firefights and the scenes of urban combat. So much of it now focused in Khan Yunis, which is towards the southern part of the Gaza Strip. The IDF has announced in different announcements and different words that they have control of areas in the north. But yet we still see ambushes and scenes of deadly battle in the north of Gaza as well, where the IDF presumably has more control. Can you explain that more?
More control, yes. Total control, absolutely not. This is a very densely populated area with many, many houses and narrow alleyways, and a terrorist can pop up from every such house, from every such alleyway. You don't know how many tunnels there may be in each street, in each house, and therefore is the IDF controlling the area? Yes. Did they reach every terrorist, every mortar shell, every anti-tank missile, every tunnel shaft? The answer is no. And this is the problem in a war such as this one. There are hundreds of tunnel shafts that can appear anywhere, and of course a completely possibly unknown underground world below it. Therefore, control on the ground, yes. Total control of the underground world, absolutely not.
Jonathan Regev for us. Thank you so much for that update in the south. Meanwhile, in the north, the tensions continue to escalate with more Hezbollah attacks, deadly attacks in recent days. Now the IDF has opened a new round of ground training in far northern Israel. This special training session has been dubbed by the IDF Precious Time, and the military training session comes after War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz warned that Israel will force Hezbollah away from the border fence militarily if diplomatic efforts fail. Hezbollah drone attacks this weekend killed yet another IDF soldier and wounded 2 more soldiers. Hezbollah forces have attacked Israeli northern towns and military posts nearly every single day in the last few weeks, and these attacks have intensified in recent days. Let's go live now to the far north of Israel, where I'm joined by I-24 News correspondent Zach Anders for an update on the Hezbollah attacks. Zach.
And we're still waiting for the exact conditions of the 2 soldiers that were injured in yesterday's drone attack, along with the one that was killed, a man in his 50s, a reservist that was killed in that drone attack. 2 other younger soldiers were wounded. We have yet to learn of the status of their injuries or the where exactly they have been taken for medical treatment. We're still putting some of that together.
And Zach, tell us more about the Hezbollah arsenal here. We know that the Hezbollah has been stepping up their attacks in recent days, still primarily limiting themselves to towns in the north or near the northern border. But their arsenal is quite formidable overall in case this does turn into a more wider conflict.
It is very formidable. The number of heavy rockets or drones that they have at their disposal isn't exactly clear through some of the assessments that have been made by the U.S. They're numerous. Some of the rockets potentially in the hundreds, potentially in the thousands of rockets throughout the country. The question being, with the heavy amount of LAF and UNIFIL presence, the United Nations interim force, peacekeepers that have been in southern Lebanon, part of their task and their role, along with the LAF, is preventing arms shipments or the movement of weapons into the south. They don't have the resources, they say, or the facilities to manage large, widespread operations to stop all movement, but they really apparently have been focusing on the big pieces of equipment, artillery, and things that you would see, vehicles by trucks. So a lot of this movement of weapons has been taking place apparently in civilian vehicles, Hezbollah is moving around the south with whatever possible they can get close to the border. So the question being, how much of their arsenal or weapons have been already stored in the south, and would they be transporting large caches of weapons should something erupt? That's, I think, one of the things we're hearing from the IDF is that's one of their main points of intelligence gathering efforts, is to try and understand where some of these weapon caches are, or where they've been built up. And should some wider spread conflict break out, knowing and understanding which points of congregation for some of this equipment would be on the list of targets.
Yeah. Zach, thanks so much for that update for us in the north. With me now in studio is retired IDF Colonel Amit Assaf, former member also of the Israeli Security Agency. Amit, thanks for being with me. I'll start in the south with the Hamas threat, and then we'll move to the ongoing situation in the north. Israel has said, Netanyahu says, we have 2 goals. One is not more important than the other: destroy Hamas, but also bring home all the hostages. Now, after this killing of the 3 hostages by the IDF, those 2 goals, are they in conflict with each other? Must one take priority over the other? Because we can't have both at the same time.
First, it's not a priority, it's an advantage, and taking an advantage during the war. Because these 2 goals are going on parallel lines. All the time, the IDF is concerning the both parallelly, and not any one of them is not better than the other. And if we have an advantage and we have an opportunity to make some effort in the war of attacking, we will attack. If we have any opportunity to save some lives of the hostages, we will do it. Again, it goes parallelly. It's not this one against the other. We have to understand that it's parallel thinking of IDF now.
Netanyahu says that we have begun negotiations. They've gone nowhere. Reportedly, Hamas's demand is we will release the hostages, but our starting point, we must have a full ceasefire permanently. Your reaction to that?
Okay, I'll give you my opinion, okay, because I'm not in the intelligence deeply now because we are not there. But my opinion, and we didn't hear from Sinwar for a long time. What we hear now is the spokesman from Lebanon. Be attention, that last announcement that we had is not from the inside. I think that Sinwar doesn't have any real connection from the outside. And the last thing that he said, that it will not be any negotiation until the war will stop, the attack will stop. And this is what we see now and hear from the Hamas members, spokesman from the outside, with no change. Meaning, maybe we don't have any communication.
Do you think Sinwar might be wounded or killed?
I can't say that, but it's a sign for us. And I think that we have to take these signs in a very sensitive way because this is a very good sign for Israel. Because if you are watching all the activity in the south, we can deeply be in action for a long time from now. Even if we are controlling the north, we can see that controlling up ground, it's not meaning that they will not dig from the down. So we have to achieve something else. If we will achieve leaders coming down and killed in this war, maybe it will be the breaking change point for this war to be surrendered, and then it will stop. And Israel is trying to understand maybe what point we are exactly and how to move on. Netanyahu is not giving us any sign for it, but he's saying we will press because he wants to see if there is any information that we can get from the inside.
Do you think time might be running out for this ground offensive, not just from international pressure, also domestically? We have hostages that have been killed mistakenly by the IDF. We have dead bodies being pulled home now. The support for the ground offensive we see the big protests now in Israel. Is the time coming to an end for this big operation?
Yes, from the point of the hostages and what the deadly things happened, and unfortunately it was a mistake maybe, but we cannot judge these soldiers until we will be there for 72 days inside fighting. We will be able to judge them. But still, it's unfortunate act that happened. But from my point of view, I'm optimistic. If they could get out from somewhere that they was holding, maybe others will be able to get out from the captivity of the Hamas, and it's very good sign for us that something is collapsing there. If somebody get the opportunity to get out,
yeah,
this is optimistic.
On the issue of the hostages, thousands of Israelis turned out last night for a big demonstration in Tel Aviv, demanding new progress in a hostage deal. The killing on Friday of those 3 shirtless, white flag waving Israeli hostages by Israeli soldiers broke the heart of a nation. And family members of hostages fear their loved ones could be next amid the chaos of war. Speakers at the demonstration last night included both the loved ones of current hostages, but also recently freed hostages, who say that the best way to get the rest out safely is another deal with Hamas.
10 days ago, I met with the cabinet. I begged the cabinet, and we all warned that the fighting would likely harm the hostages. Unfortunately, I was right. I survived. If the agreement to release the hostages had been delayed by a week, I might not be here. The hostages are experiencing hell, and they are in mortal peril. Every day, every hour, every minute is critical. Israel must offer another hostage release deal and get the international community to back it.
We want to thank the ministers at the cabinet for making a deal, and I am asking you, don't give up on anyone. Don't leave anyone behind. Do everything to get everyone home today and now.
Every day that passes, they wither a little more and wonder why the hell no one gets them out of this hell, and maybe they were actually forgotten about.
My daughter was there. Every day that passes is a danger to their lives. I was there. My daughter was there. Do not abandon the hostages. We must act now. A deal is required today. Bring them home now!
Netanyahu addressing this very issue in that press conference last night, arguing that the massive military operation in Gaza was the very reason in the first place Hamas agreed for a partial hostage deal and the reason it may do it again. Netanyahu also confirming the reports that new negotiations are actively underway to bring home remaining hostages.
Without the military pressure, we would not have succeeded in creating an outline that led to the release of 110 hostages. And only continued military pressure will lead to the release of all of our hostages. My directive to the negotiating team is based on this pressure. Ceasefire, remove our troops, they have all kinds of demands. So what do we understand? As soon as we give in, Hamas has won. We are obligated to eliminate it and return our hostages, but will not give up either this goal or that goal.
As Israel intensifies its outreach with allies to help handle the growing regional threats, the French foreign minister is here in Israel today to meet with her counterpart and also to push for diplomatic efforts to end the fighting with Hamas and also, perhaps more significantly, Hezbollah in Lebanon. I-24 News senior correspondent Owen Alterman has more.
Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen met with his French counterpart Catherine Colonna here at Ben Gurion Airport earlier on in the day. They spoke at the podiums you see behind me and had this to say, Eli Cohen, about the issue of calls for a ceasefire in Gaza.
The Hamas terror organization celebrated last week's UN General Assembly resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. No wonder they celebrate it. It's exactly what they wish for. Let me send a clear message to the international community, to the UN member states. If a terror organization celebrates your decision, it means you have made a wrong decision.
That's a charged message with the French foreign minister standing next to Eli Cohen. Of course, the French government at a relatively early stage, through President Emmanuel Macron himself, having come out and called for that ceasefire that the Israeli government sees at this stage as so unwanted. On another issue, the two sides may well see eye to eye, the issue of Israel's northern border and finding a diplomatic arrangement to move Hezbollah's military presence away from the border north of the Litani River. Here's what Foreign Minister Colonna had to say to a question from I-24 News.
Je me rendrai demain à Beyrouth.
I'll be in Beirut tomorrow, and France, just like its partners, is calling on its Lebanese counterparts to do everything they can to avoid a flare-up in Lebanon that would make it the first victim. And I'll be bringing that message to Beirut. Our partners there, I believe, feel similarly. I would like to add that very clear messages have been sent to Hezbollah as well, so that the security of Israel and of Lebanon, I must add, should not be threatened even more.
For the Israeli government, this is a tricky visit. On one hand, the deep disagreements about the war in Gaza, even with the full-throated expressions of support for the Israeli public from Foreign Minister Colonna, the fact that the French government has come out as such an important European power calling for a ceasefire obviously brings in tension with the Israeli government. On the other hand, I think the understanding in Israel that the French government is certainly not a hostile actor and also has an important role to play in the diplomacy with Lebanon, given France's ties with Lebanon and its special relationship with Lebanon, and the expressed desire of the Israeli government through the statement from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday night and the statements here at these podiums from Foreign Minister Eli Cohen earlier on today that the Israeli government wants a diplomatic solution in Lebanon as a plan A and a military operation only as a plan B. Owen Alterman, I-24 News at Ben Gurion International Airport.
Back here in studio, you wanted to make a point to me about the hostage situation, and then we'll move to Hezbollah.
Yes, another thing that we have to understand in the issue of hostages in the public, the Israeli public, is it's about the value of Israeli to have the life of anyone that we can and bring them home. Ceasefire we can do. We will not stop the war. Ceasefire we can do, and the army can do a ceasefire, but the issue of value, of getting back people back home, it's a very large issue in Israel, and especially in the Jewish religion. So I think it will be the next step for us.
So let's move to the north, the threat from the north. There seems to be this sense that as the major high-intensity battles wind down in Gaza, there's a preparation for a ramping up in Lebanon. What is your sense?
Yeah, again, what is, Nasrallah is playing with us is the play of the red line. The red line meaning if we cross the red line, maybe Israel will get into some kind of conflict there more than we have. And we can see Israel is bombing now. It was an event more than 40 kilometers to the north. It's northern than El Nabatiyah, and Saida is not long from there. And Hezbollah is waving against that missiles that was hurting Sasa kibbutz, and kibbutz Sasa is not on the border. So we are pushing these lines against each other.
At some point, doesn't that line break? Yeah. Doesn't that line break?
I think Israel is waiting for the coalition of the French and the American to save some time and to try to do something to diplomatically to get Hezbollah back into South Lebanon. But unfortunately, Nasrallah have deep inside all his system near the border, and he will not leave it until we will lead him to do it.
Israeli ministers, the war cabinet ministers, Gallant, Gantz, they have said publicly, we expect that in January, the tens of thousands of Israeli families who live in the kibbutzim, in the areas in the Gaza envelope, we expect them to be able to return home, that the situation in the south will be stable enough that those who had to leave in the south can come back. They're not saying anything about the north. They're not giving any timetable. What do you expect? How much longer can these 100,000 families who had to evacuate stay like this?
As we have refugees inside Israel. We have to understand that it's more than 130,000 people are not in their homes, and it's a very big issue in Israel because you cannot do it for a long time. Still, we are talking about some stability that we'll have in the south, but we know that we have to deal with Hezbollah someday, and the time is clicking. That's why I think the diplomatic and the political and the cabinet of war is not giving us the sign to get back. Don't prepare to get back to homes because we will have the conflict in the north.
Amit, give me your analysis, your sense, if there is a major conflict in the north with Hezbollah. The Hezbollah of 2023, not the same Hezbollah from 2006. Neither, and the IDF is not the same army either. Would this be an extremely intense, extremely difficult, deadly conflict, but short? A ground invasion lasting a few days, a week or two? Or is this a scenario that expands regionally, perhaps in something that lasts months even?
I think first, regionally, if you will watch it from the wide screen of us, we know that Tehran is holding the cards with the Hezbollah and will not get the Hezbollah the permission to do anything without any something that they will hear from Tehran. But still, if Israel will get into action, Hezbollah will have to act against Israel. And I think it will be a local one, as we saw in the Hamas, but still, we're afraid that it will be regional because Hezbollah is not Hamas for Iran. We have a lot of militia, Shia militia of Iran spreading all over the Middle East. It's something like more than 50. Like also the Houthis is a Shia militia, but the best militia of Iran is Hezbollah. It's the biggest and the important militia of Iran. So if it will be some kind of reaction in the north, maybe it could be something regional.
So maybe that's the argument against the war. Maybe Iran doesn't want Hezbollah to. Now is not the time to do it. Maybe is there
for Iran, I think from the first place it wasn't the right time. Even we know that Hamas started this war without any permission, and they are very angry about it, and they have to pay some price and with the Hezbollah for the Hamas, but still they are not agreeing and they don't want to get into it. But if they will push to get into it, it will be something that we can't expect. And as you said, it will be very intense in the north, more than in what we saw in the south side. Hezbollah, with his forces, like all the Radwan forces in the north, is not Hamas. Is more prepared, more equipped, and deeply in the ground, and it will be very, very intense action. Still, I think IDF is preparing for it. It's not a surprise anymore. It's not like in the south. And we will see more missiles to the center of Israel. We will see action on the border. We will see drones getting into Israel. It will be very difficult, but IDF is preparing for it. And also the arm that we are getting now from the United States aid is preparing to this action exactly.
I mean, thanks so much for your analysis here. Going out for a break, more live reporting coming up. We have reporters on the far northern border with Lebanon as the threats from Hezbollah intensify. Their